So one of the things that's going on with the Freedom Convoy is that the Canadian media, vile court stenographers that they are, have said, well, all these foreign people are giving money to the Freedom Convoy. Well, yeah, a few people in the U.S. and here and there have donated $50 or $100, but what about all the foreign money from, like you say, the Soroses and Bill Gates of the world who launder it through these foundations? And they never talk about that. Nobody ever talks about the influence of all this money and all of these people. Like, there's a town in upstate New York called Kingston, which used to be the capital of New York State before they moved it to Albany. Kingston is now the home of so many of these NGOs and foundations offices because, you know, they found it cheaper to be there and to get out of New York City during COVID. The entire town of Kingston is rolling on this laundered billionaire money, and that's where all of these bugs live and write their papers and try and influence the rest of our lives with zero accountability. You know, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. So you live full time in upstate New York. Do you still travel back and forth across the border for your trucking job?
No, my trucking job is local in nature because I have two little children now. And, you know, I went through the whole trucker dad thing, and I'm not going to do that to my kids. I still drive truck, but I'm home every day.
Okay. So I guess my question is then, if you're not one of the people directly affected by this, what made you decide to go get involved? Because it's not, you know, getting involved. I was watching Fox last night, actually. And Hannity and Geraldo were arguing about the ethics of this protest. Geraldo's become a woke piece of shit over the last 2 years because he's afraid of his own shadow, or maybe it's the shadow that his mustache casts. He's afraid of that. I don't know.
He does have a sweet duster. I'll give him
he
that.
does, but he's a total piece of shit. But at any rate, Geraldo brought up that the Teamsters were against the protest and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know why anybody would give a fuck what the Teamsters thought in the first place.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought this up. So I may not have sent it to you. I've been very busy the last few days. I wrote a second piece in Newsweek bringing up the fact that, you know, building on a point I made in the first piece I wrote in Newsweek is that institutional labor has been basically against the Freedom Convoy. The Teamsters in Canada have denounced us. The Canadian Steelworkers have denounced us. CUPE, which is the largest public service sector union, has denounced us. And the question has to be asked, why is it that what little is left of the private market labor representation unions have basically abandoned their membership? Because what is more prime? Like, the unions are supposed to represent and advocate for the material interests of their membership: better pay, better benefits, better conditions. You know, I'm not an anti-union guy. You know, I mean, we can say what we will about what they've become, but like, what is more materially important to you than your own bodily sovereignty and your own ability to make your own health decisions for yourself as a person?
Yeah,
right?
and to continue putting food on your fucking table.
That's right, and to continue working without having to subject yourself to these coercive measures by the state.
Right.
And across the board in Canada, every single labor union has sided with the government. When on earth are labor unions supposed to side with the state? You're supposed to side with your members, right? And there was an interaction on Twitter. Man, I wish I got kicked off, so it's hard for me to go dig this up. There was a woman in Canada named Nora Laredo who's, man, she's a piece of work, but she claimed, you know, her claim to fame is being some kind of like labor commentator. And she was in discussion with another woman who's a Teamsters shop floor steward. And this Teamsters steward said, all of my members have like effed off to go and support the convoy in Ottawa. This is terrible. I can't control these people. They actually want to support the Freedom Convoy, these evil fascists who want bodily sovereignty. So like I wrote this second article in Newsweek, posing the question, Is there a correlation between the fact that labor union participation in the United States and America has been on the decline for years? Is it because of like Reaganism in the Clinton years? Or is it because the leadership of unions have taken the wrong side on issues, right? How can you not support your members' right to bodily sovereignty? And they've abandoned that.
Yeah, I mean, that's day one stuff. That is literally the very base definition of their core responsibility to them. It is workers versus management. And in this case, government would represent management, obviously. Somebody that's trying to rob you of your ability to make a living or enforce, undue restrictions on you. And if you had any other tool or institution that no longer provided the service it was supposed to, right? So if your car floated but it didn't drive, now it's a boat, bitch. You know what I mean? It's not a car anymore. So we have to move on and buy a car. Yeah, organized labor has pretty much evaporated. I'm gonna tout a book by a friend of mine. There's a fellow named Thaddeus Russell who has his own podcast called Unregistered. His PhD thesis was on Jimmy Hoffa, right? And in that book, he basically lays out the case that Hoffa took a market-based approach to recruiting new members. And in that market-based approach, you have to get the best representation for your membership, the best rates, the best benefits, the best safety stuff, right? Like you have to sell yourself as a union and as a union representation organization to get members so that they don't go and join another union, right? And that whole idea of representing the members rather than representing the cultural affectations of the professional managerial class and the media and all these bureaucrats, which union membership, or I should say union leadership, have done. They're more interested in being in this milieu of managers and technocrats and government people, and they've completely lost the plot where it concerns the people on the ground doing the work whom they're supposed to represent. Yeah, that's a good point. So I want to go back. You're doing this stuff, traveling to Ottawa and doing media writing. You don't have to. Tell me why you got involved in this.
Okay, so, well, it's real simple. I've been a truck driver my entire life. My father and grandfather before me were truck drivers. I believe a term that gets thrown around a lot these days is identity. I identify as a trucker. That's in my blood. I've been a road warrior my entire life. I've taken it as far as I can go, including trucking in other countries. It's my thing. It's what I love to do. And I have more solidarity with my fellow truck drivers than I do with this class of bureaucrats and technocrats and managers and, totalitarian wannabes in our governments and the media, than with my fellows. So it behooved me. Like I watched the development of this freedom convoy over the last few weeks and their demands. And I said, these guys are right. They want to be able to cross the border and do their jobs and feed their families without any coercive measures from the government for a virus that's slowly going away, for which the vaccine has proven basically ineffective at preventing the spread. All of the facts on the ground indicate that what the government is doing is wrong. The least I could do is travel to Ottawa and express some solidarity for my people. That's it. Like, I don't claim to represent the Freedom Convoy. I have no connection to the Freedom Convoy or its organizers. I'm just out here because they're doing something for my fellow truck drivers whom I identify with, and the government is lying about us, and the government in Canada is entering this totalitarian phase where they've inverted reality and they're doing everything wrong and they've crossed a line. So, like, I can't just sit here and let it happen. Like I said, I'm nobody. I'm just a guy that had a little Twitter account, and I've made some commentary on a few podcasts because it's been my duty. I've studied the business I'm in, and it's the least I could do. the very least I could do was to go and show solidarity with my buddies in Ottawa. And then, as the smears and stuff started, I had to say something. Like, that's it. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. And that's it's been interesting to watch the how the convoy kind of developed and evolved, I guess. I mean, at first they were on the way, and it's also interesting to see the parallel behavior from Trudeau that whole time. So I think it was like Thursday, the weekend before they got there. The news is like kind of a little bit covering it, not much, but Trudeau's talking about they're a fringe minority with, I believe he said, unacceptable views, which is an interesting thing to say.
Unacceptable views, yes. Yeah. It's unacceptable to stand up for your own bodily sovereignty and your own right to make your own medical decisions. That's considered unacceptable by Herr Castro.
Yeah, that's a hot take. And then I think it was Friday, the truckers are about to arrive, and all of a sudden Trudeau's been exposed to somebody with COVID, so he's quarantining himself. And then a couple of days after they arrived, now he's COVID positive, so he has to quarantine further, right? But all that was just a distraction to keep him from having to answer for this shit. You know what I mean? And
right. Well, no, so what another thing that's going on here is that, another aspect of Canadian culture, even though the CBC and like institutions in the establishment in Canada have defined themselves as not being Americans for over 100 years, that's the raison d'etre of much of the Canadian media landscape, is to define ourselves as not the neighbors, which is infantile and ridiculous. But anyways, it's reflected in Trudeau's decisions. He and his advisors literally memed themselves into believing that the Freedom Convoy was going to be another January 6th, where, these insurrectionists were going to barge into Parliament and try and overthrow the government. And nothing could be further from the truth. The convoy organizers have been very explicit. We are not here to overthrow the government or to unseat any politician. We are here to end the vaccine mandates across the board and get rid of the CanPass app requirement to come and go over the border, for truckers and for everybody else. That's it.